buried alive, and no one even noticed. Not the servants, not the guards, not even the kingdom he was meant to rule sounds like fiction. Its note in the shadows of ancient empires behind golden tomb walls and royal rituals lies one of history's most chilling secrets. A royal buried alive lost to time, hidden in silence in this video. We'll uncover the forgotten traditions of ancient Chinese royalty, where kings believed the afterlife demanded more than gold. It demanded people will learn about human sacrifices hidden beneath royal tombs, the disturbing fate of attendants, and the royal who may have gone down into the earth still. Breathe and stay with us till the end, because the full story reveals not just what happened, but why no one dared to speak of it. Welcome to History Screen, where forgotten pasts come alive. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey into the dark corners of history. The ancient world death was never the end. For many royal dynasties, it was only the beginning of a journey to another realm, and for the rulers of early China, that journey required more than offerings of food, wine, or treasures. It required people centuries before the terracotta army stood watch. Real human beings were buried alive alongside kings and nobles. These attendants were meant to serve their masters, not just in life, but in death. And beyond, it was believed that the afterlife mirrored the royal court, and a great ruler could not enter it alone. This wasn't a rare act. It was a tradition, especially during the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE. In the royal capital of Yin, archaeologists have uncovered graves that chill the spine. Dozens, even hundreds of skeletons found near elite tombs. Some were warriors, others likely servants or enslaved people, all sacrificed for the comfort of someone far above them. Weren't honored, they weren't remembered. Their only role was to follow a master into the dark. There were no cries recorded, no stories told, only bones in the soil. Some were killed before burial. Others may have been lowered, and alive the earth slowly packed above them. These were not criminals. They were not enemies. They were the loyal, the obedient, the unfortunate. This ancient custom was called Zhenzang, or death with the ruler. It was considered noble, sacred, even to the kings. It was a show of power. To the priests, it was spiritual duty. But to the ones inside those tombs, it was something else entirely. And this is where the silence begins. In the ancient city of Anyang, located in northern China, archaeologists made a discovery that left even seasoned experts unsettled. Beneath layers of earth and stone, they found royal tombs from the Shang dynasty, one of China's earliest known civilizations. These weren't just simple graves. They were massive burial chambers filled with bronze treasures, chariots, and more chilling human bones. In one tomb alone, over 160 skeletons were uncovered, all carefully arranged around the central burial pit. These weren't people who died of natural causes. Most had no grave goods. Many showed signs of violent deaths, beheaded, bound, or struck down before being buried. They were likely sacrificed, but who were they? Experts believe many of them were servants, slaves, or even soldiers, people chosen or forced to follow their king into the afterlife. It was a belief deeply rooted in Shang culture that the king, even in death, needed a full court. He needed warriors to protect him, cooks to feed him, and companions to serve him in eternity. The layout of these tombs was intentional. Victims were placed along the outer edges, some buried in rows, others clustered in corners. The king's tomb sat at the center, massive and untouched, while the bodies of those sacrificed surrounded him almost like silent guards. Some were buried alive. Others were killed moments before being laid into the earth. All were part of a ritual, a practice meant to ensure that the ruler's journey into the afterlife was as powerful as his reign on earth. What makes the Anyang tombs especially haunting is the scale. Dozens of royal burials have been found, each accompanied by dozens, sometimes hundreds of human lives offered up for one man's death. It wasn't an isolated case. It was a system, part of royal culture, repeated over generations without question. Was called the first emperor of China, a man who united warring states under one rule. Qin Shi Huang didn't just want to conquer the land, he wanted to conquer death itself. When he died in 210 BCE, he was buried in what would become one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time, a vast underground mausoleum hidden beneath a hill in modern day Xi'an, but what made it truly extraordinary wasn't just its size. It was what guarded it, thousands of life-size terracotta soldiers, each with different faces. Hairstyles and armor stood silently in formation, an army carved from clay built to serve. In the afterlife, at first glance it seems like a peaceful solution, a symbolic guard, no blood, no screams. No sacrifice, but ancient records tell a darker tale according. To the historian Sima Qian, the workers who built the mausoleum were sealed. Inside, once the job was done, craftsmen, laborers, even court women, all buried alive to keep the secrets of the tomb hidden forever. The massive project took decades, and when it was finally complete, silence fell over the site for centuries. Terracotta army may have replaced human sacrifice on the surface, but beneath the ground the old ways hadn't truly died. Instead of warriors being killed for the emperor, the people who built the army became its prisoners, and it didn't stop there. Liquid mercury deadly traps, rivers of poison, all allegedly placed within the tomb to stop grave robbers and ensure no one disturbed the emperor's rest. The emperor's obsession with immortality had created something more than a grave. It had become a tomb of terror, one that likely claimed the lives of hundreds who simply knew too much. The practice of burying people alive hadn't vanished. It had only changed form as the graves grew deeper and the silence of the tombs grew heavier. Not everyone remained quiet. In ancient China, voices did rise challenging the bloody customs that sent the living into the ground with the dead one. Of the strongest critics was Mozi, the founder of Mohism. He lived during the Warring States period and openly condemned the practice of human sacrifice. To Mozi, such rituals were a waste of life and resources. He believed rulers should care for their people, not bury them alive for the afterlife. Mozi saw these sacrifices as cruel and pointless, a display of wealth and power disguised as spiritual duty. Confucian thinkers also spoke out. The philosopher Zunzi, though living generations later, called the burial of the living inhumane. He argued that true respect for the dead came through ritual and remembrance, not through bloodshed and suffering. Yet, despite such words, tradition held firm. Some kings chose to ignore the growing disapproval. One such ruler was Duke Mu of Qin. When he died in 621 BCE, he was buried with 177 people, his servants, his favorites, even his ministers. Historical records suggest they were buried alive, loyal in life and loyal in death. The criticism didn't stop the tomb from being sealed. The struggle between belief and morality had begun. On one side stood age-old traditions, powerful and rooted in divine logic. On the other, a new philosophy urging rulers to protect life, not destroy it. But in the cold silence of the royal tomb's philosophy had little power. In the 7th century BCE, Duke Mu of Qin was no ordinary ruler. He was powerful, ambitious, and determined to take his greatness with him into the afterlife. But his tomb would become one of the darkest chapters in ancient royal history. When Duke Mu died, his followers gave him a burial unlike any other. Archaeological records and historical texts say that 177 people were sealed inside his tomb, not as decorations, not as carvings, but as living, breathing attendants, buried alive. Some were his servants, some were his guards, others were musicians and court women, each one chosen to follow their master into death. They didn't go willingly. Once the body of the duke was placed inside, the doors were closed. Heavy stones sealed the chamber. No light, no air, no escape. The screams, if there were any, never made it beyond those walls. There was no ceremony for the living victims, no records of their names. They became shadows, sacrificed, not just in body, but in memory and outside the tomb. Life moved on. The court praised their ruler. The people continued their days. No one asked what had happened inside. That's what makes the story so haunting. These weren't criminals. These were real people, each with a story, each with a future. Erased, the duke's tomb was honored, his name remembered in scrolls. But the waste, 177, they were forgotten. Silence before anyone knew they were even gone. And for centuries, no one knew what had truly happened in the dark across the world. The fear of being buried alive has haunted people for centuries. In the West, it even has a name: taphophobia. The word comes from the Greek. Kaphos meaning grave and phobos meaning fear, a fear not born from fantasy but from real chilling possibilities. The 18th and 19th centuries, cases emerged of people being mistakenly declared dead only to wake up sealed in coffins. Stories of fingernail scratches inside caskets spread terror through Victorian Europe. Edgar Allan Poe captured that fear in his short story, The Premature Burial, painting a picture of helpless panic silent. Screams and a death no one would witness, but in the ancient world, premature burial wasn't just an accident. Sometimes it was intentional. In ancient China, being buried alive was once part of the royal funeral script, not by mistake, not out of fear, but as an offering, a tradition thousands of years before. Poe's pen hit paper. Rulers and dynasties like the Shang and Qin had their servants, soldiers, even concubines, sealed in the tombs alongside them. These people weren't already dead. They were meant to die with the king, sometimes in silence, sometimes screaming. Behind stone, the logic was rooted in afterlife beliefs. If a ruler needed an army, a court, or companions in life, surely he would need them in death too. But unlike the West's accidental entombments, this was done with full awareness. The victims weren't mistaken for corpses. They were chosen to become them. Other civilizations had their versions of this horror. In some parts of the ancient Middle East and North Africa, laborers who broke sacred rules or angered rulers were thrown into tombs and buried alive as punishment. In some Native American tribes, there are sparse but disturbing accounts of human offerings being buried in ceremonial grounds. Even in ancient Rome, legends speak of Vestal virgins who broke their vows, being entombed alive in small underground chambers, left with a lamp and a bit of food to die slowly in silence beneath the city. Yet none of these stories match the eerie scale of what happened in ancient China. In one royal tomb alone, archaeologists found over 160 human remains buried near the body of a king. Their bones were arranged with care. No signs of fighting, no weapons in hand. Many were women, young, likely attendants, likely alive when the tomb was sealed. There are no Western counterparts. On this level, no European king buried with hundreds of live souls. No silent attendants pressed into service beneath marble crypts. And what makes this tale more haunting is that it was done in plain sight. Entire courts knew, entire societies accepted it, and the silence around it lasted for centuries. No accident, no confusion, just a quiet death beneath the weight of power, ritual, and stone. Buried beneath layers of stone, sealed inside royal tombs and hidden from the world for centuries. These were the final moments of those who served their king in life and in death. They weren't soldiers on a battlefield. They weren't victims of accident or misfortune. They were chosen, forced, and silenced, buried alive so that a powerful ruler would not face the afterlife alone. In this ancient world, belief held more weight than breath, and the grip of ritual was stronger than mercy. It's in these dark corners of history that we see how power, faith, and tragedy often walked hand in hand. The tombs were grand, the rituals sacred, but within them lay stories of human loss, forgotten names, unheard cries, and lives sacrificed without question. These aren't just ancient customs, they're warnings, reminders of how far people will go in the name of loyalty, fear, and belief. And though centuries have passed, we're still uncovering their truth, one bone, one artifact, one story at a time. You for watching. If this story moved you or shocked you, leave a comment below and tell us what surprised you the most. And if you want to explore more hidden tales from the past, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to History Screen. There's so much more history waiting to be uncovered.